No one stirred in the farmhouse before noon the following day. And the word went round that from somewhere or other, the pigs had acquired the money to buy themselves another case of whiskey. Now, we'll finish this up next week, but in the meantime, I don't want you bossing the other animals around, or it's right back to Three Little Pigs, I swear. You guys listening to me? Okay, good. For those of you from other planets, these are pigs. A famous French gastronome wrote, "The pig is but a giant dish which walks while waiting to be served." Here in America, we're fond of saying we use everything but the oink, or is it the squeal? All this versatility is great, of course, but it can lead to some confusion for the home cook. Consider the cuts. There are hams at both ends, the shoulder's called the butt, and what's with all these ribs? Well, funny I should ask, because we've chosen the loin ribs, or baby backs, as base camp for a number of episodes dedicated to exploring the endless possibilities of pork. So stick around. This, not to mention these, are definitely good eats. Good eats! Well, I wouldn't exactly call it another white meat. Pork does pale in comparison to both beef and lamb. The reason, as Mr. Spock would say, is logical. You see, grazing animals like cattle and sheep eat grass. Grass contains iron. Iron produces myoglobin. Myoglobin tints meat red. Pigs don't do grass. They're like us. They eat everything, corn mostly, and that's why they have whiter flesh. They're also pretty modern animals. They've changed with the times. They've kept up with popular demand. They've become leaner, cleaner, healthier on the hoof and on the plate. Yet still, when we meet head to snoot at fine establishments like this, we have a failure to communicate, which is why we're here visiting my good friend and butcher, Richard Metzger, who is going to take us on a little tour of the porcine rib cage. How you doing, Richard?
All right, how are you?
I'm doing fine. So, what's the deal?
Well, basically, this is a pork loin, which is the back of the pig.
So it's like
right
one side
here.
of the back, right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are the ribs?
If you take this thing and roll it over.
Just like rolling our pig over like that? Ah,
so
okay.
basically on the inside.
Tail, head.
That's right. And this one right here is the baby back rib.
Okay, so the baby backs are the very first ones off of the spine then?
Yeah, just the closest to the spine.
Okay.
Basically the backbone will be right here. And this right here is a spare rib.
Oh, so that just butts right up against
this. It just attaches right to this, like that.
So one rib cage, 3 ribs, really. I mean, you got baby backs, spare ribs. What is this?
This right here is a chest bone you take off the spare rib right here, and this would make it a St. Louis style cut rib.
Why do they call them St. Louis cuts?
I have no idea.
You ever been to St. Louis?
No.
Well, next time I go, I'm going to ask them. So culinarily speaking, spare ribs, baby backs, what's the difference in how you cook them and how they taste?
The spare rib takes longer to cook because it's a little more tougher meat and it's thicker. It's got more meat on it.
More meat.
And baby back is just a more tender piece of meat.
So a little more forgiving, probably?
Yeah, doesn't take that long to cook.
Okay, let me make sure I got this straight now, just so that I'm clear. When we look at the whole rib cage action there, if we were on the inside of the pig, it would all look like this, and the spine would be up here. So the first cut's the baby back, which goes off the loin, and then that would leave the whole spare rib. You cut off the bottom, and you get the St. Louis rib, and beyond this would be belly, bacon, right?
Well, no, this actually, the bacon, this is sitting on top of it.
Oh, so this is spare rib, and then on this side, that's bacon.
Yeah, the bacon would be this thick sitting on top of it.
Don't you just love pigs? Well, I tell you what, Richard, I'm going to go with 4 of these guys if you'd wrap them up for me.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See, luckily, I've got a butcher who is my friend and takes care of me. You know, if you haven't made friends with your butcher, you really ought to think about it, because friends don't let friends buy junk. Of course, these days, quite a few markets are choosing to sell ribs in their original cryovac containers. This is how they're packaged by the packer. Now, this is okay by me, because not only is this more economical, but properly refrigerated, it'll keep 2, 3, even 4 weeks. And I'll look for packs of either 2 ribs or 4. Now, you'll notice when you shop for pork that you're not going to find any quality grades. No select, no prime, no choice. They just don't do pork that way. If you want an explanation, just go ask a Fed. Although consumer cuts are not quality graded, all fresh pork products sold in the United States are inspected for wholesomeness by state or federal agencies. Whole carcasses, however, do receive grades of either 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending upon overall meat yield. Since these ratings relate only to whole animals and bear no relationship to consumer cuts, they are of no concern to you. This grading process, however, is paid for voluntarily by the packer rather than with your greatly appreciated tax dollars. Ask any porcine professional and they'll tell you the key to rib flavor is in a miraculous mixture of salt, pepper, herbs, and spices called a dry rub. Add a little smoke and you've got a divine device called barbecue. The road to barbecue Mecca has led this pork pilgrim deep into the belly of Georgia. It is here at the annual Big Pig Jig, where we hope to rub shoulders with 7th level dry rub rib masters, loosen up their lips with some beer, and steal all their secrets. Rub's really kind of, I guess, the secret to this barbecue, huh?
It is a secret.
That's your rub there, I guess, huh, Jeff?
Exactly.
You want to tell me what's in your rub there, Jeff? I guess the secret's in your rub, huh? Yeah? You want to tell me what's in it? No. What's your secret?
Key to it's the rub right here.
Ah, the magic dust. So, you gonna tell me what's in your rub, Myron?
I'd either have to kill you later or marry you one. Looks like you're already married.
Yeah. So, what did we learn? Well, we learned that pro barbecuers, besides being impervious to bribery by beer, are unsharing and, well, slightly paranoid when it comes to their rub voodoo. Well, I say we've got science, and science kicks voodoo's butt any old day of the week. We'll make our own darn rub. We're going with what we call an 8-3-1 plus 1 rub. And what we're talking about here is parts. 8 parts of light brown sugar, 3 parts of kosher salt, and 1 part of chili powder, plus 1, which we'll get to shortly. Now, it doesn't matter if we're dealing with grams or tons or bushels. It doesn't matter as long as it's the correct number of parts. So we can use anything to measure this. For instance, the lid off this well-placed box of bamboo forks. I have no idea what measurement that is, but it's perfect. Now, it's important when you scoop this stuff that you kind of pack it down because, as you can see, it gets a lot of air underneath it. So just pack it down and count to 8. 1, 2, 8. 8 parts, light brown sugar. Moving down the line, we've got 3 parts of kosher salt, 1 part of chili powder. Now, seal up nice and tight in a mason jar or some other jar that you've washed and shake to combine. Now, right now, this is kind of like a no-frills automobile. It's a rub, but it's basic. You know, it's the chassis, wheels, roof. That's about it. As far as the add-ons go, you know, CD player, wire, wheel covers, seat warmers, that kind of thing, well, that's the plus 1 part of the equation, and that is completely up to you. You could use just about anything. You could use another part of chili powder if you wanted to. But we'd like to mix things up a little. As a matter of fact, we've discovered there are 6 things that we like to mix up into that 1 part, starting with black pepper. Now, these are just small amounts that are going to add up to the 1 part. Cayenne, jalapeno seasoning, which is really just dried and ground jalapenos with some other seasons added. Little Old Bay, personal favorite of mine. Rubbed or dried thyme for an herbal note. And that leaves us with just enough room for onion powder. There we go. Yeah, that's 1 part. Now, that goes on top, and again, we cover and shake. Now, sealed up tight in this jar, to keep it away from heat or really bright light like sunlight, this will last until bell bottoms come back again. And, note a Good Eats refinement here. 1 lid for sealing, and underneath, 1 for shaking. Cool, huh? Now, lay each slab out on its own big piece of heavy-duty aluminum foil, and make sure that the shiny side is down. That'll make the heat come in just a little bit slower, which is good. Now, lay on the rub and don't be prissy about it. Contact is critical. Now, despite the name, rubbing is not actually necessary, but a little bit of patting along the way will make sure that plenty of contact's being made. There. Push on and flip. Now this other side doesn't matter quite as much, so don't go overboard. It's mostly the convex side that we're after. Why aluminum foil? Well, because we can basically shape the pan to fit the food, which is a good thing. And of course, you don't have to wash it. I love that. So, bring it right up in the middle and just fold it over once and then push down. We don't want to do any fancy crimping because we've got to get back into these to add some liquid later. There. Now, these are going to go right back into the refrigerator for at least 1 hour before cooking. You could do this, well, the night before, and it would be even better. Now, wash those porky hands. Sensuous unctuousness that compels us to lick our fingers when rib eating comes from a power deep within the ribs themselves. Gelatin. Now, all animal muscle is made up of bunches of fibers held together and in place by various connective tissues. Now, some cuts, like tenderloin, don't do much work, so they don't have a lot of connective tissue, but other cuts, including our ribs, that either work a lot or have a lot of bones, do have a lot of connective tissue. You might want to turn away. Okay. Now, let's just pretend for a minute that this is a bundle of muscle fibers, right? These exposed wires are the actual meat fibers themselves. Now, they're all surrounded by connective tissues, just like these wires are surrounded by insulation. But they're not all alike. See, some of these tissues don't do much but draw up and get chewy when cooked. We'll call those gristle. But others, say these red guys here, well, they're coated in a protein called collagen. And under the right circumstances, collagen dissolves into gelatin, the stuff that makes ribs so finger-licking good and brings body to homemade stocks, even helps gelatin dishes to set. As a matter of fact, Jell-O was originally named after gelatin. Now, how does this amazing transformation occur? Well, all has to do with a long, low, moist, and covered cooking method called braising. Unlike stewing, where meat literally cooks completely submerged in liquid, braising utilizes just enough liquid to keep the food moist while it cooks. Now, collagen, being a protein, couldn't care what liquid it dissolves in. But since we plan to take this braising liquid later on and reduce it into a sauce, it'd be a very good thing to have a balance of acidity, salinity, and sweetness. So, into a microwavable container will go, for moisture and acidity, 1 cup of white wine. Bolster that with 2 tablespoons of white wine vinegar. If you don't have white wine vinegar, it's okay. Just use any vinegar that you've got. 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. That takes care of the salty. Now for the sweet, a tablespoon of honey. And I never measure this stuff. I just figure that each squeeze is a teaspoon. So 3 squeezes. 1, 2, 3. 3 teaspoons makes a tablespoon. Now, really last but not least, 2 smashed and chopped cloves of garlic. You don't have to be pretty with it, and you don't have to be fancy with it. Now, why garlic? Hey, garlic don't need no reason. There we go. And look, it's pre-chopped for us. So, if you smash right, you don't have to do anything else. Just scoop that right in and lid it up. We're going to put this in the microwave for 1 minute. Meanwhile, we will prep the ribs. Minutes up, and everything is melted up. Sugars have dissolved nicely. So all we've got to do is introduce this to the ribs. And we don't have to unwrap everything. Just open up one end of the crimp and kind of turn it into a funnel. Looks like a couple of big silver wide-mouthed bass. Make sure that the opening's over the tray in case you do any spilling, which I usually do. Half the liquid goes into this side, and half the liquid goes into this side. Then just give the tray a little bit of a tilt just to kind of distribute everything down there. Hear it gurgle, gurgle. Then crimp up the ends. Next stop for these bad boys is a 225 degree oven for 2.5 hours. Now, aggressive oven management is required here, so cook by your instruments, namely the oven thermometer. See, if it gets too hot in here, the meat's going to dry out in spite of all that liquid. In that case, no amount of dissolved gelatin in the world will ever bring that lip-smacking goodness back. When it comes to ribs, speed kills, so do not attempt to pick up the pace on this. Your patience will be rewarded. Well, the timer says the braise is done, but there's only really one way to know for sure, and that's to look and feel. So, slide out your rack and just open up one end of one of the pouches. Now, you can do this with paper towels, but I'm trying to sacrifice myself for science here. There, now just grab one end, lift up, and then reach for one of the, one of the ribs further back. Just grab it and give it a twist. Now, if you feel the bone just rotating in the socket, that means that the collagen has started to dissolve around the bone. And that means that these ribs are done. So I'm going to get my saucier out. You can use any wide pan. And just lay the packet right in the middle of the pan like that, and take your kitchen shears and just snip a hole in the foil. It's like opening a nice barrel of wine. It'll drain right out. Now, all in all, I'd say that we got about a cup and a half of liquid back out of this. And those are fine liquid assets indeed. Because after about 5, maybe 10 minutes on high heat, this is going to convert down to a beautiful rich glaze that's going to have a lot of clinging power. It's going to stick to the ribs better than any barbecue sauce you could ever buy. 10 minutes later, and a humble braising liquid is reduced down to a barbecue sauce that's suitable for bottling and selling for $6 a shot. Of course, that would probably require special licenses and permits, so we'll just stick to this. Get this off of the heat, by the way, because when it gets to this consistency, the next step is burned, and it happens very quick. So let's go ahead and open up the ribs, but do not remove them from the foil. Foil is actually going to help us get them colored once they're under the broiler. Now, grab your nearest basting brush, this is the only way, and literally paint the glaze right onto the meat. Just like that. It's literally like painting a house. We really don't want to get a super thick layer on there or it will definitely burn. This goes under the broiler, but I'm not about to tell you how long. The reason is, I don't want you to walk away from this, even for a minute, because in as little as 30 seconds, that sugar is going to start to bubble on top that's in the glaze. It's going to start to caramelize. And in as little as a minute, it's going to be brown. 10 more seconds, it'll be black. So keep a very close eye on it. Now, there are a lot of rib shacks out there that would probably just plop this right on the plate as is. They buy these huge plates and just lay them out. It's impressive, but it's kind of tricky to eat. So what I like to do is to separate everything into 2 rib chunks. Also makes it a lot easier to glaze, but that's getting ahead of myself. So just look down at the bones, turn it bump side up, and just slice right in between the bones. About every 2. Put a little bit of the hot glaze right in the bottom of a stainless steel bowl, biggest one I've got, and just add the ribs and toss them in with the sauce. Just lay them all out and kind of toss around just to make sure that everything is evenly coated. That way everyone will be guaranteed of getting the correct proportion of meat to sauce in every loving bite. There we go. That's it. Now, usually when I dine on ribs, I do it right in the kitchen. Why? Well, there are drapes in the dining room, if you get my drift. So, plate goes down, and I see absolutely no reason to put anything on it but ribs. Now, for you devout pitmen out there, I would like you to note that never in this program have we referred to these luscious ribs as barbecue, because they're not. Barbecue requires smoke, and of course, we did not use smoke. But you have to admit, even without striking a single match, you can turn out a delicious slab of ribs in your kitchen. All you have to do is follow the rib protocol. That means giving them a rub, giving them a rest in the refrigerator, braising them slowly, then reducing the braising liquid to a glaze, then glazing the ribs, and then broiling them finally. Well, that's not final. What's final is eating them, which can get a little messy. I'm Alton Brown. This is Good Eats. So is this. And you might want to look away in here.